Hey everyone, and welcome to Chasing Growth, the purpose to encourage you with challenging ideas to get better. Today I'm going to talk about leadership and character. I'm going to give you two examples from what we can call a branch of our culture, which is politics. In the 90s, we have Bill Clinton having an affair or having a sexual encounter with somebody in the White House. And he lied about it, he denied it, and eventually we all know there was truth. This is the problem. When this was happening, people who was trying to defend him will say, listen, well, he's a good president. The economy is good. This is happening. What he does in his private life doesn't really matter. In other words, his character doesn't matter. Then we move many years later and we see Donald Trump. And people will defend him the same way. He will say, hey, it doesn't matter what he does on social media or the things that he say or his attitude, because look around. The economy is good, this is good, that is good. And again, the same problem. We're separating the leadership or the person from their character for what they do in private. And I believe that's a big mistake. And we have seen in history, in politics, a lot of time. I mean, John Kennedy was bringing prostitutes to the White House, and nobody knew this because, again, he was a good president and blah, blah, blah. So when we start doing that, we start playing with fire because eventually those things will come up to the light. And the leadership and the influence and the impact of that person will go to the trash. Many people will be disappointed. People will be hurt. We have the experience with pastors. We just know that not long ago, we have a pastor who died, and he was involved in weird stuff. And again, personally, I thought he was great. I respect the guy. I mean, a lot of insightful thoughts about Christianity. And then you find out this is like, how in the world? How in the world that is possible? I was listening to a podcast about another pastor who, great church, created a whole movement. And people was coming to God and receiving Christ and all that stuff. But then the truth about their private life or what's happening in that internally came out. And it was a big problem to the point that church closed. Now, you might be thinking, why am I talking about this? Because I believe we tend to believe that. And as leaders, we have to be very careful about this. We cannot separate our leadership from our character. But what is the problem? What is the temptation? When you start advancing as a leader and people start giving you more high fives, they're opening the door for you, they're getting the coffee, they love you, they say you're the best and all that stuff, you start believing those things. And you start believing that you have to be that person. So you constantly have to be on. You constantly have to be on, and you have to be aware. You cannot do some things in public. You have to be careful. And I said Publix. You can do it in Kroger too. That's a joke. But anyways, you have to be on all the time. And I imagine pastors the same thing. A pastor is a leader that is recognized, is public, and people. You may see people in Walmart. You may see people in different places, and you constantly have to be on. You constantly have to be to some point performing. And the problem is that you start separating your private life from that, and this action, this behavior that you present to the public become, again, a performance. It's not you. It's what people expect because they have been telling you, you're the best preacher, you're the best leader, you're so kind, all this. And you start performing this all the time. But we all need an outlet, and some people will find it in the wrong things. They will find it in pornography. They will find in alcohol, drugs, who knows what. And the problem is that as long as the performance keep going and the result is still coming and people is becoming believers and people buying the products, whatever, we start to believe the same thing. Doesn't matter. This is not a big deal what I do in private, what I do in my private life. And it is a problem. Because the problem is that you as a person start building something and the compound effect, the principle of that start taking place. And you start, looking a little bit of this, drinking a little of that, doing this and that, and then eventually start growing. Start growing, and become worse and worse and worse. And there's a point when you cannot hold it anymore. And that bomb that explodes, it will affect your leadership. And everything you have been building will go to the trash. So what do we do? What do we do to avoid this? As Christian leaders, what do we do to avoid this? I believe that the first thing we need to do is to recognize the potential that we have to do bad things, to recognize the dark side. So Next time when you hear the story of somebody who have done something stupid in leadership, somebody who compromised the character, don't point fingers. Just recognize that you have the same potential as the same potential that person has to do the same stupid thing. Because as soon you start recognizing this and you start realizing that you can do the same thing, you're gonna start being more careful. You're gonna start realizing that you need help. And if you're not a Christian leader, you know where that help comes from. That help comes from the Lord. And you need that. So what do? You start praying your dark side. You start praying your fears. You start praying your anxieties. You start praying about it. You start presenting it to God. Let me give you an example. You're a you're a leader. You're receiving praise, and it feels weird to go and tell God, God, I just want to confess something. When people praise me, it feels so good. I enjoy it. I like it. It feels weird because we tend to think that we have to confess our sins, killing somebody or lying and all that stuff. But these things about the heart have to be confessed too. And when we start doing that, more things start coming out. Hey, I like that. I like this. I enjoy that. Father, I'm tempting this way. And you start building a brutally honest relationship with God when you start presenting your dark side and you don't try to hide it. You don't try to hide it. And you become so aware that you have the same potential, the same potential to do horrible things than anybody else. And the only difference is that you have the help of God to guide you. And you start recognizing, you start working on it, you start avoiding situations. So for example, a man and a woman, you're a leader and a woman is praising you and you like it and you like to spend time with her. And you go and you start praying and you pray that God, when I was talking with her, even I have a wife and I have children, it felt good. She listened to me. I feel it felt great. God, help me to do this. And when you start verbalizing these things, it start losing power and you start seeing how stupid that is. And you start walking away from it. You start walking away from it. You start creating boundaries around it because you start recognizing. The worst thing that you can do is not recognizing, not seeing it, and start separating your performance from your character. Don't do that. So what do? You recognize your dark side and you start praying it. You start talking to God about it. As what is the lie? What is the lie that you cannot believe? When you're praying about it, when you're talking with God about it, the lie is that shame. You feel shame because it's you're a pastor, you're a Christian leader, you have all these people who's following you and they want to be like you, they want to follow your example because you're so like Christ, right? And then it's shameful and humiliating to tell God, I fantasize with this. I want to have that. God, I'm jealous. God, I have anger issues. All that stuff. It's hard. Because again, everybody's telling you that you're great. But the truth is that you have the same potential to do wrong. So when you start recognizing, you start verbalizing, you start talking about it, with God, start losing power and you become aware. That's the best thing that can happen to you, that you become aware about it. If you're not become aware, you're gonna start doing the same thing that all these people have been doing, separating character from the performance. And yes, you will be on, you will be the pastor, you will be the leader, you will say the right thing in public, and you will do all these things. But in secret, your life will be a mess. Every leader have the same tension to be there, so you want to avoid that. And I know it sounds simple because you may think, well, I'm not as that. No, people don't know me that much. I don't have that. Listen, it can happen in every level. It can happen in every level. You have to be so careful. Now, the second thing you have to do when you start recognizing who you are, the dark side, the potential that you have to do stupid things in specific areas, because we all have these tendencies. When you recognize that, what do? You build boundaries. You build boundaries around it. I always remember these boundaries that Billy Graham used to talk about it, not being in an elevator with a woman by himself and stuff like that, or meeting with a woman by himself. That didn't come because he was just, super smart and it's the culture. Probably he knew himself. Probably he knew his tendencies. Probably he knew the things that were difficult to deal with, the thing that felt good. And as men, we have to, recognize this big time because we can be so stupid when it's about ladies and the opposite sex. So you have to create boundaries around your leadership. And it can be as simple as never being alone or not traveling alone or never have access to the internet when you're alone, etc. You can do all these things because all what you're doing, you're recognizing your potential to do the stupid thing, the potential of your dark side, and you start avoiding it, creating boundaries. So again, because the moment that you start separating your character from your performance, everybody's happy with you because your performance, and nobody care about your private life. Eventually, it will get to you, and it will be a big problem. We see another example in sport, Tiger Woods. He's great. He's the best of all times. Blah blah blah. Golf, all this stuff, and then he messed up. And I'm sure he didn't mess up one time. When we find out about the accident and everything else, this has been happening for a while. All the prostitution, all this stuff and all stuff, and probably happened because he was looking for an outlet, and probably happened because he was looking for an escape, and he allowed himself to do one thing, then he went to the next, the compound effect happened, and eventually it was a big mess, big problem, and sadly, he couldn't be recognized and remembered for being the best in what he did, but now he's remembered for the stupid thing that he did. And that can happen to you and to me, and we have to be aware of our dark side, pray our dark side, and start building boundaries around our leadership so we cannot fall for this. And again, there's all type of boundaries. And when I'm talking about this, again, like I mentioned Billy Graham, I mean, I'm sure he thought about this, and that was a potential for problems. So instead to compromise, say, oh, being with a woman in one meeting, it won't be a problem by ourselves. It's not a big deal. Oh, maybe 2 or 3. And then these things are happening, one thing get to another, big problem. So generate and create boundaries around it. So that's what I want to talk to you. And you are in that place. It's my heart for you to recognize that dark side, start dealing with it, start praying the dark side, start talking to God about it. Hey God, it feels good, the praise. It feels good when this lady said this about me. It feels, all these things feel good. Father, I feel I deserve this, I deserve that. Father, why I feel jealous? Father, why I feel anger when somebody don't like me? Blah, blah, blah. You start talking all those things, and you start recognizing your dark side. You become aware of it so you can build real boundaries around your leadership. I hope this video helped you. I will see you next week. And now I want to talk to you about this for a second, about this book. This is my children's book. I want you to go and buy it, please. It's available everywhere, which I'm surprised. And it has been endorsed by Dr. Charles Stanley, which is a pretty cool thing. I've been endorsed by Dr. Stanley. And it's a great book for children. It's the story of a little girl and her encounter with Jesus Christ. Go find it, buy it, and also let me remind you, you can, if you're watching this video on YouTube, subscribe. That will help me. And also, if you listening on podcasts, in a different podcast, make a comment, like it, send some questions. I thank you so much, and God bless you. Have a great week.